Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And today we have another powerful interview. We are welcoming back our sister, Dr. Susan Tatah. And today we're going to talk about polygamy, but from a village perspective. And we had our good brother, Hondo Solomon, earlier this year to talk about polygamy, but we want to hear a woman's voice and more so an indigenous perspective and experience in the culture. So, all of that and more when we return in just a moment. And we are back. And just want to thank each and every one of you who is joining the conversation today. And so make sure that you take notes. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section below. And, we'll be sure to get back to you with any answers that have not been answered in this particular program. But as mentioned earlier, we actually have back uh, Dr. Susan Tata. We had an interview with her earlier this year. She was one of the presenters for the Hoppy One Africa conference that was held in Detroit, Michigan at the beginning of the year. And she gave a powerful presentation. And in preparation for that event, she blessed us with her presence on the show. And towards the very end of the show, and probably like, in passing, she just kind of threw it by us and, had mentioned, her consultations on polygamy and how many people kind of have a warped sense of what it is. And we wanted to invite her back to the Mbongi to have that larger discussion. And so, if you are unfamiliar with Dr. Susan Tata, she is a freelance journalist and event consultant, building networks, empowering communities at home and abroad through cultural education, exchange, and events. And she is also the host of Pan African Daily TV, which you can catch on YouTube. And at this address, you could probably catch on other social media platforms and the like. And this is a very powerful guest, and I'm so honored that she has uh, allowed us to consume just a little bit of her time. Um, and we welcome Dr. Susan Tata. Thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much, Brother Ansar Imhotep and the Mbongi entire community. It's a wonderful pleasure for me to be here, to share your amazing platform, to be a part of your network and all the big, massive voices and scholars, mentors, and teachers that have been a part of this network. I'm so humbled to be here. Thank you.
The pleasure is all mine. The pleasure is all mine. Well, before we get into our topic today, um, what have you been up to since the Happy One Africa Power and Unity Conference that was held in Detroit, Michigan earlier this year?
All right. First of all, I'm really happy because prior to that concert, to that conference, you came on the Pan African Daily TV, and that's how we get to get connected. Um, we had the privilege to have your opinion and get to know your own work. Immediately after the conference, I had to pull back to my event in Germany, which is something that I created for the past 20 years. And we had to do the 16th edition of the Africa Festival Expo in Germany, Tübingen, which we actually named the Umoja wa Africa, which means we're coming together as Africans worldwide. So I really
Mm.
was busy on that project, and yeah. And later on, after the project, I went back to Pan African Daily. And right now, I'm sitting here in the US and speaking to you, my siblings out here.
Indeed, indeed. Um, so I guess we can, get started in the sense of, remind us exactly where you are from, so we can kind of set the context for the experience which you're going to
Mhm.
share with us today.
All right. A product of polygamy, which is a topic that we're going to be handling today. And that's why, first of all, I'd like to inform all your viewers and our audience that I'm not speaking from a research point of view or from academic point of view. I'm bringing in the experience, hands-on, this topic as a product from this topic. It means I'm originally born and raised in Cameroon, in the southern region of Cameroon. And like everyone know, I'm a village girl and grew up in the village with my parents. And my mother happened to have been the second wife to my dad. And so I grew up in a political or in a polygamous setup. So I'm going to bring my experiences and some findings which I had to do because of the challenges in such a structure. I question a lot if that is really the ancient African culture or it was some kind of Europeanized settings. And I realized from my findings that I want to share with you people today, um, bringing the original concept from what I heard from my grandmothers in the village, and also bringing the perspective of where I think has been the whole mix up that makes that structure today not appealing. But to me, it's one of the best family structures if we will actually align with the objectives and the vision to make it part of a powerful African ancient culture. It is, yes.
Thank you, thank you. And I guess, well, we understand polygamy to be a kind of marriage construct, whereas usually one man with two or more wives. So we're not talking about um, polyamory in the sense of just dating multiple people. We're talking about in a marriage context, and so I guess the first question, well, before I guess the modern days, was there anything similar to dating? How did uh, what was the marriage process in your village? And so just assuming just the first wife, or just if they were monogamous, just the husband and wife, that initial setting. How how would one go about that process uh, from where you're from?
Actually, the first thing that I want to begin with is like polygamy has different formats. For
Mm,
instance, I'm taking the case study of my mom. Um, Normally, in some African customs and traditions and culture, a woman can become a polygamy not by choice, like the normal one that the man would go and get married to the second wife with the consent of the first wife. And so it could also
mm,
happen in a setting where the original husband of the other wife dies, for instance, and the wife is obliged to become the wife of the brother-in-law who was, or father-in-law who was. So you have the different setup
mm,
of polygamy. Why we see only the end product, and we call it polygamy. Like in the case of my mom was not supposed to get married to my father. My father was the one who
mm,
intended or paid the bride price for my mom, or asked the hand of my mom into marriage for his junior brother. And so it so happened
mm,
that his junior brother was in the military and died at war before he came. And before that, they had married my mom, and she was living in the compound with who is my father today. And so, because of that incident, automatically by the customs, my father now to get married to my mom. And so you see that kind of a
mm,
setup where you just grow up and then you meet two wives. And so there's a lot of format why the end product is what we see. But coming back to the normal basic structure in what we see today, where a man gets married to multiple wives, and they form a whole part of a big compound, um, a family with children growing up and actually embracing one another, sharing their husband, sharing everything that they have, their property and food and clothing and land and businesses together. That's the format that we see, even though it has been dealt and tempered with. That is what we see today. So the
mm,
normal tradition is like it's the man that now probably has the first wife, and then secondly, then they decide, normally they decide together as a collective to say, okay, we need a second wife. All right, from what I know from my experiences in the village, before I even go to the origin of the concept, as I was told, is in the normal present days, we just see a man make a decision, go and get another wife, and then just bring in a third wife. And most of these factors today, particularly in these modern times, has to do with economic incentives. Probably the man has could keep one or multiple wives, and so he is like the decider. Now, okay, I have this wife, and in some cultures it's really crazy. Okay, this wife maybe because of different reasons cannot put to birth. Now I need to get me another wife, and he would just do it because he has the means, or because also the in-laws, they don't even care whether the other woman is there or what she's going through. They just want their daughter to get a hand in married, or maybe get a roof on his head or something like that. And now we see, even in the southern region, this king of Swaziland actually obliging the men, which is becoming like a right now, like a rule of law, obliging a man to take at least five wives by law. And the justification for this upgrade in polygamy is that there are lots of women and shortages of men. And so it comes down in that concept of an economic revolution in this sector. But brother, let me just tell you what I know from the village, and how I come to this, if you permit me to continue, or you want to have a question on that before we go on. Okay,
I
I
had my
can hear
mic on
you.
mute. Oh, I'm sorry, I
Okay.
had my mic on mute. Um, what before we go there, what I want to try to set up is the concept of marriage itself, even before we even get to, possible more than one wife. Like when people get together, what does that mean? What is the purpose of marriage in the context? And is there a process in terms of like initiation, in terms of training? How do people prepare to be marriage? And what are the roles of the husband, and what are the roles of the wife
Mhm.
in that institution?
All right, I would take it from the ancient African perspective because a lot, like I said, um, with the with the colonizers on our continent, they came with a lot of structures that actually deviated, and that's why it's really complex now. Most people are still arguing on some of the rituals that we go through marriage in our own and say this is our culture. But then until you go into a deeper research to ask, but this could probably not be our culture, and then you start finding the different dynamics. So, but from a normal perspective, from what I know from the ancient history, or what I know from my grandmother before even coming up to my mother, a man would get married to a woman. This is the stage of our grandmothers, but I still have a very interesting um, stage before that. It never was the man who went for a woman, it was the woman who went for a man in that setup. Okay, but that's the pre stage before getting to the stage of in the category of my grandmother. And so it is a village arrangement, as I can say, that there really was nothing like I will meet you, Brother Answer, and I fall in love with you, and then I bring you in front of my parents. This one now is in the generation of me, not even my mom. So, but I'm talking in the generation of my grandmom. And so it was some kind of arrangement depending on the families. Oh, I know your daughter, and your daughter is hardworking in the village. She knows how to keep the household and the community and stuff together. And then, oh, my son too. My son too is, at that age where we think that he needs to settle down and he needs a sister or a woman, a mother that will take care. And so they look at the characteristics of both. Usually it would be friends, as a matter of fact, like your father would be friends somehow with my own family. And so the children, the way we grow up, my mom knows the way he raised me and your parents, and they just see that we will fit together to make a beautiful family. And not just in terms of both of them, but it was a continuity of both family relations that our parents were first. And so, like I said, it was an arrangement in which the mom would talk to the girl, to her daughter, like, okay, the son of this man is coming to get your hand into marriage. And usually, from what I know, the mother had a very huge influence if the girl would accept to it or not, depending on what she is gonna say. So, but it so happened like it was the choice of the girl actually to decide whether she would like it or not. But in most cases, from what we saw, like from the case of my mom and my grandmom, there was no room for you to decide. It was just something that the parents arranged because of their relationship first, that they put, and they know that they raised their children well, and they think that it could be a continuity. And so the woman would accept that arrangement. So they will go into like the family of the man would come to ask the hand, like we see today, and there will be really some very good rituals. But in the meantime, when they come for the introduction, and they will bring kola nut, and officially giving that kind of a right of consent, that they will ask the girl or give room for the girl and the boy to get to know themselves, just even see themselves. And that when that process is over, then now they will come down for an official introduction of the families that would go now to the next stage of bridal rituals. They bring kola nut. And what today we see as a bride price actually was in another context of like, right, I'm giving you my daughter, And the other siblings will be like, no, she used to take care of me. Oh, my sister used to give me clothing. Now who is going to give me that clothing? No, I need something to let her go. And then they'll be like, the other family will be like, okay, we give you 20,000. Please just clean your tears. You will not be having your sister. And then you see an auntie will come up like, no, I can just allow my daughter. This one, she is the backbone. She's the one that does everything. And you see, and then they would be giving, what today is mostly in terms of money, but like in the time of my mom, she said they would just give something. They can give maybe food or something or clothing and say, no, just take this for yourself. But today we all brand it as if it was a kind of selling the women. And then we started talking about when the Europeans came and they interpreted it as a bride price, as if you are selling, you're selling your daughter. And now, after that process is done and the man gets the wife, he can do any kind of thing. No, it never was like that. It was a negotiation strategy in which the family of the woman would be so like, no, we don't want to give her precious diamond. She's just gold. She's just everything. She's the queen of our family. And most mothers were like, I don't even want to give her hand in marriage. Or the father of the girl were like, no, this is my only, they call it the hen, referring like to the cock and the hen. This is my diamond. I can't just let it go. And so the process of negotiation and giving prizes or gift or something was like the husband had to really prove his worth, that no, yes, I do agree, it's your diamond, it's still part of our family, but just take this, just have this for now. And that ceremony, after that ceremony, they will come now to the official rituals. When that one is done, they have to see the uncle of the girl, they have to see the aunties of the girl, they have to see the direct siblings, and do that kind of traditions. But you still have some other cultural traditions which has to do with like, that one is hard, like you must give it from the customs, like maybe a piece of cloth of the great grandmother, which is very very symbolic, like for the fertility of the girl into the marriage. And so when this ceremony and this other one is done, where they introduce themselves, now the wife becomes the bride of the man. They would go, they would still not, depending on how your mom went into marriage in my village, that's how they would also do to the girl. For instance, my mom, you had a setup where she was cut up. Cut up means she just leaves one money like, I'm going to the farm, or the other family of where she's getting married invite her and said, okay, she is coming maybe for something. They just like, okay, send your daughter to come and carry me water or fetch me firewood. And when she gets to that compound, then she's caught up. She's not coming back home. So if they did that to my mom, they definitely going to do that to me, because it's a setup. So they will just catch me into the marriage. And so that was the very famous one, where you see the woman now will start crying. And that is all. You are not allowed to go back to your compound again. You're just going to be that bride. Anything that you left, whether they were your clothes or anything, it just has to stay. And then your mom, they will arrange it and bring it to you, because that's the way they took your mom. That's the way they're going to take the daughter. All right, but you have the other normal format, like if if they came officially and they had to do the ritual. So now my mom would be in a setup with her aunties, and they start preparing her now how she's going to be the bride in that family. And the women had their called, that they will talk to the girl how to raise your children, how to behave in a setup like this, and if um, uh, challenges would come up in that family, what are the things that you're supposed to do? And when you, the husband, come back, these aunties would be the one now to question you and say, and tell you everything about their daughter, like schooling you. This is who my daughter is. You are taking any into marriage. Know that my daughter, she doesn't get up early. She is slow. She is not the type that likes to go out. And so your parents would actually school your husband on the type of a girl that I am, in such a case that when you take me and you come back to complain about those things, My aunties and my mom would say, but we told you this is who our daughter is. Okay, so it was not like us now that we do a meeting, you get to know me, I get to know you. No, it was really an arrangement from the mother that raised her girl. She knows the challenges of her girl, and she knows what would be the case. And she would always tell you, well, I'm just warning you, know that my girl is not a type that she doesn't like going out or she doesn't like makeup. She's shy and she's not an early bird. Or, oh, please watch out. This one, she's a nightclub girl. She says what she thinks. She's so they would just call you on who that girl is. But it's not like every single thing. So it's just like giving you a big picture. Like I said, they never met, they don't meet, they don't get to know themselves like in our structures today where you date and then you begin to understand. No, it was from hands-on marriage. And so what you get is what it is. And because the objectives of marriage was simple, it was about family. And so whatever thing would happen in that marriage, we put first the values of the structure before even us. And that's why you see in these setups, like in the village, you would never see our parents quarrel. And the rate of divorce was so less to nothing. Or we didn't hear things like abortion. My grandmother used to say, when they start hearing that there was a case of abortion, and the first questions the grandmothers would ask, like, but why did you even go in for sex? Because a girl would only go in for sex when she wanted to have a child and when she was in marriage. So it was not, those vocabulary never existed. Like, of course, this is what you wanted. And then, so what now? And so it was a simple, uncomplicated structure in which the objectives, the aims, the vision was set and clear from the beginning. And that's why the parents became the first primary consultants or advisors. And the reason why you won't see those divorces happen is anything that will happen in that marriage, they would always fall back on the parents, and particularly the mother-in-law of the girl, with particular emphasis on that. And so it was very simple, complicated, and they enjoyed their lives. And that's why you see, like I said, the rate of divorce. And if something would happen with my son-in-law, I mean, I'll be the first person to sit down and call him. And the mother-in-law just took this son also, like, this is my son. Even though I'm giving you my daughter, but you are my son. You're part of the family. There never was any division, like if something will happen, then I would defend my daughter or I would stand on the case of my daughter. No, I will sit them down and bring a kind of a harmony. If my daughter is wrong, I'm really just going to caution her in the background. I said, what did I tell you? Is this how I raised you? Da, 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 things like that. And the harmony would just be back. If the son was wrong or didn't actually go through the manhood of preparation for that, you see, the parents would also, but usually was the mother-in-law of the girl who played that very essential role and would even give information about their own son to the parents. And so the harmony just went on and everything looks like happy ever to what we know today. I think I'm going to stop here and take your questions again.
I got to remember that I'm on mute. Uh, I appreciate that greatly. And so now I want to, since we kind of set a framework for, I guess, marriage in general, you know, so how do we get to, the polygamous version, of marriage? And, just for the sake of discussion, is it possible for a woman to have multiple husbands, or is it just strictly a husband with multiple wives?
Um, Okay, originally, I think to answer your question, I have to go now to that theory of the ancient, how polygamy even came about from what I was told by my mothers in the village. Polygamy was actually a womanhood. It is the women, the mothers that came up with the concept of polygamy. Never was a man construct. Never. Never was even the idea. But because the women played a very essential role and represent the decision makers in the community in every aspect. I mean, in every aspect, even meaning, even if the men had to go to war, they would have to ask the consent of the mothers. And that's why you see, like in the Akan cultures, you see the queen mother role um, is very essential for every decision, even to decide who is going to be the next of kin. It has to be the queen mother that will make that decision. But traditionally, in the ancient African woman, it had always been like that. Like every decision in the community had to go through the woman. Same thing, like even in marriage, before the man would even make love to the wife, to his woman, he would have to ask the consent of the woman, and he will have to do some rituals a week even before he would even touch her. Okay, they do cleansing and stuff like that. You're not supposed to eat this and that. And she would actually, and if the woman would say no, she's not ready, it is a no. So the role of the ancient woman had been really that strong role. I mean, influential role. When I say strong, not in terms of how we look at women today and say, oh, they're strong women and stuff like that. And so that's why we see the meddling of these cultures now that came into us. I want to throw back just a simple logical thinking why we see the structures that have been broken and represented. Like I said, the role that the man had and the role of the woman. It doesn't mean that the man was subordinate or the king. No, it just means that there were certain structures that they put according to the gift of whichever gender is doing it. And so the woman becomes the community, the organizer, the leader. That was her role. And now we wonder why, when we're talking about the Amazons or the Black Panther or the Woman King, why are all these things coming up today? Is because of that role. And we do know, whether we argue and do all kind of research or not, it was easy for the Europeans to use our men than the women, because the women were never given to any concept whatever. They never would have. And we do know that the Amazons were the one that went to war before we know the story of the Black Panther, how she was defeated, captured, and came out as a panther, isn't it? And now we see the same format coming in a woman king, trying to bring out this role that the woman would have in the community, even in terms of decision making and choices. And marriage was the basic, was the strongest foundation. And so when the woman would have to decide, and that was what the community would go with. So, for instance, like I take in the ancient culture, this idea of polygamy came from the women. Why? Like from what my grandmother and even her great grandmother told her was like, in those days, it's not like today. In those days, when you will give birth, like I said, you're only going to your man to produce, to have a child. There was nothing in between, like we just have sex and just for fun and just do things. It was intentional. And because the man, like Joshua Maponga said, carries the gene of the ancestors, and the mother is the door opener to produce that copy of the ancestral gene and bring it into an extension of who we are today. It's very clear and easy to understand the roles. And so the role of the mother, no, she was a creator. And so she needs 9 months to create. And after 9 months, she needs, my grandmother said, 5 years to breastfeed her child and to take care of her child during that time. And that's the really essential stage where you see now the modern science come up and say, the best way to capture children or anything you want to implant into them is between the ages of 0 to 5 years. And that's what our ancient mothers did. That's why some of the times I look at the theory and the scientific theory and I laugh. I say, what they're struggling to do today, our great grandmothers did it centuries ago. And everything is documented, how they steal all these structures and begin to make them their own. No, our great grandmothers knew we had to create this life, the ancestral gene taken over from my husband, and I need 5 years to nurture it. And so, in terms of communication, in terms of breastfeeding, in terms of staying at home, in terms of raising, exactly like you said, that's why anything that had to do with marriage is the mother that would talk. It is never the man. It was always the mom, because the mom prepared this stage even from her pregnancy to what the girl would become. So she knows her daughter in out. So, or like his son too. I mean, if he's the mother that is giving the hand of the son into marriage, I'm just saying it from the opposite side now. So during this period, they were so disciplined not to even meet with the husband. For 5 years, I have to breastfeed, I have to nurture my child, I have to take care even of the father. And so, what they do, they know about if we do intersex, I could get pregnant again. And the first rule was it's going to spoil the breast milk of the child, and it's going to intervene in the growth and the natural genes of this baby. And so, they were so disciplined. And so, it became a part where, like I said, the woman is the organizer, the everything, the manager, the conception, the visionary. And they started talking among themselves, like, yes, but within this 5 years, what do I do with my husband? How do I take care of him? Okay. And they came up with this construct. All right, we have to look for younger girls or our friends in the community to take care of our husbands while I breastfeed my child, while I nurture this child. It was a harmony where it is the woman who goes to the other woman to say, please, I would like you to take care of my husband for this period, while I'm breastfeeding. And the same thing would happen. And now you see why, when we come to the concept of a child belongs to the whole village in the African concept, in the Ubuntu concept. Because at the end of the day, it was our child. And today we hear scholars just use the word. People don't go to the deeper meaning of why was it say it takes a village to raise a child? Because at that time, no one in that setup, nobody even knew now who is really. If my friend, for instance, came and in that time where he's taking care of my husband got pregnant, okay, so, but because the harmony was between the women, everything was just done in a professional way. The harmony was there. There's going to be no respect. We see it even to today in the modern structures in another format. So the queen mother is the queen mother, like in the cases of today where probably she has her children and she sees my husband is still feed, because it was all about creating life, enough life that we need. And so the bringing out of children was a gift. And you see, children were like, it's a blessing. You could count your wealth, you could count your humanity, you could count your possession from your children, from the number of children that the village will have. And so that was the wealth of the nation, of the community, of the village, of the compound, children. And so it really did not matter whether it's my child that is my biological child, whatever they call it today, or it's my sister's child that she had with my husband, or this. The objective and the intentions were very clear and defined. And so that's why you see there was less of this jealousy, there was less of this backbiting, there was less of this egocentric, is my husband. Oh, and they divided their schedule. Come to think about it. I mean, like in the stage after this one, the next stage become the stage where if I'm like the senior wife and I'm tired, right? Or maybe I have other objectives, like other things that I'm doing, then I will sit down with my husband and say, you know what, we need other children, and now I cannot proceed because I'm doing projects and stuff like that. What if we get us another woman? And the wife, it would always be the idea of the woman. Never was it of the man. The man just took it now when the Europeans came and decided to bring this patriarchy and to reduce the women, the power of the women, the decision making of the women. And it was easy to catch the man into it. And the only thing they could do was catch a man. And, it was now about the transition of the concept to just sex. And that's how
Mhm.
they empower the men, and they begin now to reduce the powers of the woman, to say, oh no, they are weak, oh they're the marginalized sector, oh widows and mothers or the elderly would always be referred to a woman. When you hear a widow, nobody thinks about a widower, you know. And in that case, so when they brought up all these structures, it just mingled everything into a polygamous setup. And now the men became the decision makers. If they want to hurt their women, or they want to abuse a woman, or they just want to do any kind of a mess that we see today, it's the man that takes the decision. A woman is married to the man, and the man just brings in another woman you don't even know and you don't even hear. And it's a very unhealthy structure like what we see today, and we see it doesn't last, because everything now is just about the ego, the power that I can, and nothing is value. And even the men, they marry 20 women, and now in this kind of setup, they will still go out and look for 21 to 30 outside, even if they're not bringing them. So, but what I'm saying is, and I'm of that school, it is the best thing that could happen to African society and culture. I saw it, and I saw the harmony. And of course, there are challenges, like when we were growing with our siblings and stuff, we were already getting into the modern setup where a lot of materialism was concerned, where a lot of ego and jealousy and anger and such things. But in the pre concept of everything was harmony, and the woman will go look for her second wife, and he will come. There will never be any disrespect even between the second woman to the mother. She would treat her first mother like her elder sister or her mom herself. And even the consent of the mothers of the girls would be sought. And they would make it clear and simple. Know that you're going to help. That's the way they will always say, like in the village, know that you're going to help, and know that you're going. And when they give you the palm oil, and it is the mother, the first mother, that goes and marry her second wife into her home. And now when they come and they say, okay, now our stock has grown, our wealth has grown, but we need more children. Now, if we are not, how are we going to do with our wealth, our farms, our crops, our cattle are growing? And then now they will sit again with the first and the second and say, no, we need a third. And it will be the decision of both, and then they will get the third. And so the hierarchy was always like that. There was never anything like, oh, it's because the woman is marginalized. No, at the end of the day, even the structure of the house, the husband would still ask the consent of the first woman, and they would just do the things in the way they did it. And that's how the family expanded.
I appreciate it greatly. You just kind of reminded me of something, and while you were talking, I went and found it. Um, and so I'm gonna share my screen real quick, and so I'm gonna make this full screen. And so this is a a text by Lobinga,
Mhm.
and it's titled "Readings in Pre-Colonial Central Africa." And what the text is a translation into English. I think in his original book he translated it into French, but the first Europeans, when they enter a new space, they want to jot down everything, right, and give their interpretations. But nonetheless, when they encountered these various African groups, they would keep journals and keep notes. And so what Theophilo Binga did was to take some of those notes and describing some of the Central African kingdoms. And so this particular citation here is dealing with the Kuba people in the kingdom, and that's primarily in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so he says this about the women there, which I think echoes much of what you said in earlier in your answering to my initial question. And it says the social position of Bushongo, the Kuba kingdom is also known as Shango and the Bushongo. Uh, Bukuba kingdom is also known as the Bushongo as well. So the social position of Bushongo women is remarkable. The first personality in the kingdom is a woman, the queen mother. Among the important people in the kingdom, Women have two representatives, and in the Council of Elders, there are several women. The woman is not bought, but is considered fair that a man who has deprived a father of his daughter, who was useful to him, should give him some little compensation.
Sure.
Also, the fact that the woman must give her consent to marriage eliminates the idea of slavery.
Yes.
Moreover, the fundamental idea of marriage for them is that it constitutes a collaboration between husband and wife. This, of course, is the case only in areas where Arabic or Portuguese influence has not been felt,
Correct.
you know. And from that same text for the same kingdom, it says the role of the woman is to provide vegetables for her husband to eat, while the role of the husband is to provide game meat and defend the household.
Correct.
If the husband fails in his duties, his wife will leave him. I have that bolded in red.
Yes.
If the wife neglects her functions, the husband can press charges and the guilty wife will be punished or chased from her conjugal home. Being the stronger of the two spouses, the husband is the head of the family. However, in many instances, the woman's decision takes precedence. One even notices that important political questions are frequently decided by women. And I'll end there. But I just wanted to share that because it echoes much of what you say. And even though it's a different group, a different culture, but fundamentally all ancestrally connected between the people in Cameroon and, of course, just down a little bit south in Democratic Republic of Congo. Uh, but just to give some historical context to much of what Dr. Tatah has mentioned for the listening audience, and and to see that I can give more examples from other areas, and to show that much of what she is saying is very common in pre-colonial Africa, and that the colonial structure not only changed the dynamic in terms of the relationship between African people and foreigners, and modes of production and the like, but also influenced and changed heavily in some ways how we relate to each other, and that's what we're trying to get back to and understand, to adjust what we're doing in quote unquote modern times, to get back to that essence of relating. And so, for those of you who are just joining us, I am here with Dr. Susan Tatah. We are talking about polygamy from a village perspective. And to continue the conversation, I think I may have um, kind of interrupted or cut you off at the beginning, but I want to go back to your experience personally, as a
Hmm.
child of a polygamous marriage, and what was your personal experiences relating? I don't think I asked you how many siblings you have, but to your other siblings, and how you looked at the the other mother. Was there just two, or was there more? Um,
Just two.
just two. So to the other mother, how did you see your relationship growing up with them? And so, after that, we can go into some challenges, and then, of course, the benefits. And you kind of leaned on some of the benefits a little earlier, but we can revisit that as well.
Hmm. Actually, like I said, my mother became the second, so automatically the children of the second wife would adopt the who we call mommy. Mommy is the elder woman and she can play every role like your mother. And so it was not like if I would have something to share with my mom, I can equally share it with mommy. And that's the way it happened. Like, like I said, it really was an intentional construction. Though they had a lot of challenges, we will go to those challenges. But I think these challenges also came now with a Western influence. And that was why the challenges become what we see today. But if I look at it in the colonial history, I don't see, if I talk to a lot that also came up from that setting, the challenges that I had or the experiences that I had, because I already now had moved into the city, studied, went to university, and had other conversations with people who actually were single. And you could see the way the parents and the mother, they're harmonious, just to, they don't have to share. But then now you begin to see in your own structure that you come, there's another construct. And that's when we start building the notion of what is good or what is not good and how it's supposed to look like. Without that information being exposed to that kind of new information, we would actually still be, in the setup, in the traditional village setup, and everything was just good. We didn't even know the difference sometimes. We didn't know when my father, for instance, was going to my stepmother and then coming to my mother. We never saw that happen. But one thing we realized, when they had to collaborate, it was when they had to discipline us. And then you could see some, but mommy was my mother, and my mom was my second mother, as a matter of fact. Even because in that setup, the first woman becomes really the mother of the house and makes decision that, because your mother is subordinate also to her, we just take into it. And that's how the children also harmonize with that. With my steps, there was no difference. We grew up together, ate together, slept together, went to the farms together, and then went to college together. And it was just a part of it. So like I said, but when we moved now from the rural setting into the urban setting, and then you find some other structures. Of course, in the village, not every woman was polygamous, but we never had that kind of an impression. Like I said, the setup was, the more children you have, the more wives you have, you were considered a rich person. And so you have the capacity, to own a lot of land, a lot of properties and stuff like that. And so the fact that the compound was always busy with a lot of children, not really. For my own, we are six. From my mom, we are six. Okay, two passed on, we would have been eight. So I have three brothers and three sisters. And then from my stepmother, she's fortunately of late. If you had reminded me, I will show you the picture of my parents. I don't know if I can still put it here for your audience to see. I can post a picture of my dad and the two wives, if you don't mind. Maybe later on I can send it for you to load it up. And
No problem. If you can share on your screen, like if you have, on the computer that you're on, if you have them on there,
I can
you
do.
can
I will
share.
definitely do it in the end. Like, yes, I have it. I always have their picture with me. And so you
Okay,
see
no problem.
that harmony, like your mom and your stepmom, and you were just a product of this family. There's never going to be a time that I would consider, oh no, I have to do something just with my mom, which I also think it's an extreme. But if you're growing up in that. And today, because I'm grown up woman, I used to question my mother a lot. And that's how I even begin to know that no, she actually did not get married into polygamy by choice, but it was just what happened. Because I asked my mom, why did you even have to go into it? Was it that, and stuff like that. And so the conversations became very, very okay. But now, to be honest with you, if we want to get into the challenges, you will begin to see the trauma in which they went through, and they actually could not express themselves. But to be honest with you, those traumas happen even in single relationships. Okay. if there was an abuse for most of the setting, like in sharing property, like in farmland, which woman would have the most fertile side and which one, in that kind of role, you could see that there was a lot of simple slight changes, like the big woman or mommy has to get the authorization, or um, has the right of the better things than the second woman, like she came in. But of course, again, it still goes down to the personality of whom the first mother is. And so nothing is like it's a norm that would happen like that. Like I said, my own experience will be different from other experiences, but now most of the issues had to do now with the personality of why somebody decides then to get an urge over the other, or along the way, probably, because the younger women came in, the elderly women maybe could have, it's a feeling, could develop feelings of jealousy, and then that kind of impartiality would come in. But apart from that, like I said, these are individuals thing. Until today, my mom, my dad passed on, my stepmother passed on, my mom is still the one, and all the other children they still regard her like this is the mommy of the compound now, you know, and yeah.
All righty. Well, so given that you grew up in this tradition, is this something that you see yourself being involved in the future? Would you consider a second or a third wife for your husband?
Yes, yes, I will because um first, I am a person that I believe in our family values. I believe in a compound that is full of harmony. But it takes really another level to think and to behave this way. First of all, you have to really just not be about you. You have to bring down your level of ego. It's a point of being intentional. What I do most of the time, like when I see my ancestors and they do things, I try to, or my ancestor, or my past, or my grandmothers, and I realize, yes, it's possible. If they did not just put some order, I don't know, it's my man, has to be with me, has to be only with me. We have to be seen in public. This me, 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 me. And sometimes I ask myself, I think they really enjoy even their own space. When they had to give the king or the man the autonomy and the decision and the authority to just do also to get his own space, but not in a kind of a way that you see the European, they brought in like, all right, we're saying not to one man, it has to be a one man, one woman, but then they have a lot of prostitution homes or red light homes that are open for men and women. And you begin to say who becomes the polygamy in a very legal, straight way, in a way that it's just about money making. It's just about taking the energy of the man or the woman or whatever. Everything has to be focused on money. But if we go back to the setup of our parents, you see that it was not part of it. And so the women had enough time even for themselves. Come on, give me a break. If I would love to get married to you as a second or 10 wife, to be honest. Why? Because the ideology was if the man, like you really read in the notes of Professor Obenga, the duty of the man is to protect the family and to provide. So I would go out and hunt. That's why we were hunters. The king would go out, make sure that he brings meat. Meat was something that was, and you would make sure, like my mother, I have my farmland where I produce my vegetables and then I feed the family. It was as clear and as simple without even interpretation a lot. But what I realized with my mom was like when she came, and then she didn't even have a lot of farmland in her husband's compound. And so what she did is she farmed from her parents' compound. And so there was still harmony there. And so when we would go to the farms, and my mom was like, you see, this is my father's land. And because she was the daughter, there were just three daughters. They didn't have a son. And so all of them, they could also inherit their father's property. And so there was nothing about land dispute or, oh no, I don't have the right side to farm my yams or my beans or my stuff. Because actually we were pastorals, as you know, from the origin. That's why this issue of land and our properties and the goods in the family come into it. There never was a situation like we're saying now, okay, you go to school. That was their setup. And everything was just fine. And so the jealousy just began to come in, like if the first woman, like I said, mommy would decide and said, okay, now Pa just bought a farm and now I get 80%. Why 80%? Because now mommy has sons that are maybe five, and these five sons have gotten married. And so she divides it among the wives of her sons. And so the woman that doesn't have the children becomes now like, okay, you just have to have one because that's for you. So, but those are other setups that it really depends now on the compounds and how they do their stuff. But at the end of the day, what I'm just saying is that was the role. And my father just knew I get up in the morning, I go for the cattle, and in the modern society now, then they take part of the cattle, go and sell and exchange for other commodities and brought them home. But everybody just knew when we got up in the morning. Usually, really, I didn't actually grow up in the village with them. I left, and I grew up with my senior when I was just 2 years. But I'm talking about the experience that will come every during the vacation, and we'll meet the setup in the compound. You know, and yes, so I will. And I would caution and I would advise any young man or any man. The only thing is when you get the objective of the structure, anything that we begin to talk about, like, no, I don't have time for this, it's just because it is even more common in the one-to-one marriages today than in the polygamy. Polygamy is just like a very fair situation, right? Where me, the woman, I also have time for my vision and my own things. And so I can support my young wife. And particularly, one very interesting point in it that I look at it positive is the first woman knows the husband. And that is the reason why is the first woman goes and look for the kind of girl that knows would fit to her husband. And so you see the conversation is changing. Why? Because the husband goes to look for his wife out of the other wife. There's no communication between the two wives. And now he already brings the setup into what we call the modern polygamy today, which was brought to us by the Europeans, as I said. And so the man never knew the wife that he's going out to take. So you need to have time in our own setting to date the woman, to know the woman. But how do you harmonize both women to set up a harmonious family situation? If now you just get up, go and pick another woman without the consent of your first wife, then automatically you've already broken the family. You're going to put them against each other. But now imagine it's a whole setup from the origin of the concept that we sit down and look at our needs and look at ourselves. And like, then sometimes, like, now I have the boys, they're grown up. I really would not have time to sit down, to nurture life again in this time. Why don't we get us a wife? Because I know the role of the man was not just to provide, but because he was producing. He was bringing the ancestral library to produce the family, which makes the population. And we know the best economy tools is the population. That's the biggest weapon in every continent. And that's why when we say we're the biggest continent, and now when they came with their construct and tried to demonize polygamy, that was the first reason, so that the reproduction of our species, of our extensions will be limited. Will be limited. So one woman, and then they pipe it on now. Like here, if you have even 5 or 10 children, they look at you as an asocial. This is not normal. And then they even pipe the number of children. The size of the family, always downsizing it until it even becomes nothing now, until we can marry between us and not even produce children. So it was a dynamic of a continuity of an ancestral extension, why this decision came. So why would I, like a woman, be so jealous? Like, no, I don't want to. There's just something in this concept of why this other setup come to me, you, and you. It's already a constraint to say I have to get only you, you have to get only me, we have to go out only me and you. Everything has to center us. But do you see the workload, the stress, the energy that is being put to maintain this structure of one person, one person? It's a lot of energy inside there, and a negative energy, because 80% or 60% or 50% of what we see is just the outside. But most of the time, because there's no diversity in that home, be it between children, be it between me and my junior wife just sitting and doing our things, or my senior wife do our own things that is just about us. But now I'm alone, I'm stuck to you alone. And then we have to do, some other things together. Of course, they will tell you time is short. We have a lot of things to do. But I'm talking about the ancient African society, because our roles were defined. We had a lot of time, so much time. We didn't have to rush. Or the woman has to be burdened with go to look for 10 jobs because she has to share the rent. It was clear. You go bring meat, protect me, and the children and the village, because our kings were warriors. Remember, we used to have enemies that would come in not only into the compound but also into the village. But today we see women go into war and then leave the children behind, and then they will go to foster homes, and then they will begin. Of course, that's the society and the technology and the world that we've grown up to. And that's why I'm a custodian to the village setup and the compound and the village strategy. There's nothing that is beating Africa in every aspect when we just go back to the village setup of how we raise our children, of how we harmonize, of how the women group together, put their money and their funds to elevate one another. If my child had gone to university, so we'll have to collect and give to the other one's child to go. And you could not see that kind of poverty that we're seeing today. You did not see that ego is mine, is mine, is mine, is I, is I, is I. Till today, even when we relocated to Europe, me and my siblings, I'm here in Kentucky at the last of Bonds, our Benjamin. He's also called Bernard. He's 26 years old. And but look at the situation in which we were when we left now, studied, and then came out here. Till today, my mother didn't leave the village. Okay, now she's in Yaoundé, in the capital city, because of the war that is going on in Cameroon, but she never left. And she never allowed us to put her a structure from what she inherited from her husband. Never. Because it was that kind of a notion of harmony, like, so yes, you guys have grown up and maybe you're okay now, you can build me a house. What about the other women in the village? It would always be about the collective. And even when we send, like, Christmas is coming or some kind of holidays, you cannot send food just to my mother without that she would share it with the whole village. And that's why you see the migrant communities, when we come out here, we have like we say, we take care of a whole village. That's where it comes from. Because from the harmony of our parents, it never was my own, your own. So even the other daughters from the other families, when they send something, they will have to share it amongst all of them. Oh, do you remember Annie? Annie is now in Germany, and Annie is now a big woman talking on television. And oh, Annie sent us this money so that we could, socialize during Christmas. And the whole community will gather together and they will send you prayers, and everybody knows you and know your children, and that's how we extend it. What is wrong and what is just not as beautiful as this construct like this? And so I advise men, women, even the ones that have gone into it and don't know how to figure it out. It's all about self-love, my brother. It's all about self-love. If I love myself, it is just as easy for me to love my husband and to love my coexistence as women. And imagine, like I told you, the first idea was the more we are many, the more rich we are. That was the identity of the African. And so in some other villages, like if you become now the single woman, or you become now like not single because of you're like the one woman. In the times of my grandmother, she would say they all refer to you as a negative witch. Say, are you a witch? How can you stay in the compound alone, just you and your husband and your children? So it's like you're poor. Yes.
Uh, you said something a little earlier concerning the
Hold on.
uh, the role of the man in terms of being the line, or I guess the channel for which ancestors come. And when when you said that, it sparked a question in my head in terms of the role in the traditional spiritual system and the framework and the paradigm within it in the construct of the marriage itself. Um, like that underlying philosophy also seems to be absent in a lot of modern marriages, so to speak.
Mhm.
And uh, and then secondly, when because I'm always doing research on ancient Kemet, we wonder how all of these groups of people in the village would be able to work together to build the kind of constructs and things when there was no money involved
Mhm.
in the economy.
Mhm.
And it leads me back to the spirituality component, and then of course back to that famous saying, it takes a village. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, and what is the underlying, like what would you call even the spiritual tradition of of your particular
Mhm.
people in village, and how does that relate to the subject today?
I think the major facet that we see in the spirituality, um, in terms of collectiveness, was sharing, was the act of sharing, and the groupings and the roles. Like I said, if we look at a village was supposed to, there's supposed to be a river that will be constructed. The roles were clearly defined by the king or the community that will sit together and say, okay, now we need a road that will lead from this farm or to this from this community to the other community, and they will sit down together, the elders in the council, and they divide the role. Okay, the young boys, you would be in charge of, first of all, go pave the way of the road. The elderly, they will go cut the woods, and then the students, when they come back, they would be in charge of transporting it, and then the middle ones will be in charge of the game. Okay, in the modern community, like the ones that already have relocated to the urban city, if they are not present, they would send money. But what I grew up seeing, even money was not allowed. They would take off a day where all of them will meet in the village to realize that project of building a bridge. During the time when they set up the structure, the women were in charge of preparing food when the men are working. I did it myself. I know it. I know when those days would come. And you had some particular traditional days when it will be a day that is set up only for community and the village work. So, like during the week, you had your own things that you had to go to your farm and your family, so to the market and stuff like that. But once in a week, with us particularly, was called a JE, which was a Tuesday. And on that Tuesday, the people don't go anywhere. They have to gather in the community square. They look at what was supposed to be done. And on these days, that's where they produce, or they prepare the week or the month or the season through rituals. Okay, like cleansing of the land, like we need the rains to fall in this season. So the elders of the village would come together and they would do those rituals. All right, there will be a season when they say, okay, we have more pregnant women now in the village. We have to do rituals before they will put to birth, to cleanse them and stuff and cleanse the land, or even just to take food, a cash crop from the other neighboring villages, which were considered as the outer village. They would perform a rituals where, in a traditional way and in the spirituality way, they would grab the food, the fertility of that food. And when I was growing up, even when the rivers would flow, I mean, our ancestors could conjure the rains. The rains would flood, and there would be a flood, and they would pull out food from the neighboring village if they didn't have to bring to their own. And as a child, I grew up, and because I really was so curious. I always was curious about everything that was happening. And one time I almost drowned in the river because I had to follow my mother in the night to go and see what they were doing this. And you heard it, and I can still remember it today, drums playing in the river that was overflowing. And when we came back, and we would just sneak and hear our parents say, yeah, those were the people of those other where we took their stuff, and now they're coming to war. So yes, there were wars, but these were spiritual wars, taking food from the other land, taking, and that's how they did with their economy. Because if you miss on the rituals of your own possessions and the common things that they do, and you wouldn't do it, or a woman or a man would default that process, so you will lose the whole season. And so you will see a season that will come where the women will be crying, oh, our crops dried up in the rain, there were no rains and stuff like that, because the cleansing of the land, or somebody defiled that process. And so that process could not, and so the whole village will have to suffer. Or there will be no rains, or there will be bushfire that just came out. But you see, these are things that is so difficult to explain in a scientific way, in the modern technology, and they would even believe you and said, you're just talking. And I think that's one of the powers that when the colonizers came to us, they had to trick our kingdoms to go through this process of what is this power of even just taking the resources from the neighboring land without going to physical war. We never saw any wars that they really had to fight. I mean, like I was good, but you heard all those things and you saw those meetings, and at the end there would be food, that particular food that people would eat. And that's why we even come, sorry to deviate you, in the concept of the Bible. When we're talking about today, we can swear on the Bible. We can get the Bible in the church, and any kind of, I don't know who can just swear on the Bible and still go ahead and do the same shit and nothing will happen. Try that in the village setup. Go to the village and swear at the village square corner home. See, and if it is a lie, whether you will even get home, you will not get home alive. And that's how that power of that spirituality, when you spoke a lie, and you see in the principles of Ma'at, reciprocity, you cannot. If I am going to say, I'm swearing I did not touch the piece of land of my brother, or I did not catch his chicken and something happened, and we say we're going to the palace to swear in front of the elders. And when we get in front of the elders and I put my hand and I said, I did not, I am so sure. Because if I make even, there's no mistake in the law of the African spirituality. There's no mistake. Nothing. As I put my hands and before the elders and I say, if I'm lying on what I said, let me not get home. I will not get home if it was a lie. You understand? That's the power that when we look at these other structures today, and you can do anything, you can mess around, you can do it, nothing happens. And you begin to ask, where's the power? Where is the power? And you know where the power lies. So yes, I would advise, but I'm not also against people who are saying that I'm just bringing my experience and what I know, and why I know why the Democrats or whatever concepts are coming to us to even demonize polygamy and put other structures that are just senseless. So now you begin to understand where the power, where the notion was, and where should we focus on. And so if me, like the mother, the girl, I understand this. Oh my God. Now you understand, like I said, if you just know the construct of it, of course, I would agree with the king of Swaziland to say, hey, you cannot. We have a lot of women. But the thing is, not going it in a political format, that will not work. Because you also have to understand that if women are not a part of the process, it becomes a heavy burden to the man. And that was what the Europeans did. You can imagine if you get married to me, automatically you've gotten married to my family. That's the way it is. And so my brothers, my siblings, and everybody, oh, uncle, this. So if it's time for Christmas, it's time for everything, you have to give gift into the family. All right, now today, modern families, everybody, they're already independent, they end their lives, so things like, but it's still a ritual that we hold on to. You have to do it. You're my husband. That's what makes me that, yes, that positioning of this is my husband. There's some things that we African women from the village just don't do. We don't love doing it. We don't want to even do it because we want our husbands to do it, because that makes me feel your wife, and even if I can do it, I just do not do it. Don't ask me what thing. Yes, but you see, like this was the part. So you get married to me, you get married to my family. And that's why it always was about family. It's always about people. It's not like, oh, now I'm married to my wife, I just take my life and we disappear. And before you even come home, you have to ask for permission, or you have to, no, your mother-in-law will just creep into your house without even telling you I'm coming. And for the man, it's a pride. Oh, my mother-in-law is there. Or my, your brothers, and that they just come home. Of course, not 100% are all these things in harmony. But what I'm here to say, to give us that opinion, is that I am the first and the only woman that would stand to these values, because I experience it and I know the value and I know why we are fought, why these values must not exist, is enough reason for us to preserve, to uphold them, to celebrate them, to be proud about them. If they are rightly implemented, like I was saying, it is a lot of a burden for the male child. And now you see why even that burden, if the woman is not part of that process, just both of you, it's already too much. It's not like in our modern communities, you just have your wife, you and your wife, you just mind your business and you just do your things. And even your children, the family is not a part. No, for us, it's a whole family thing. Your parents, my parents, us, cousins, and even relatives have a right, not just a right in that kind of way, they have access to, being a part of the whole collective. So, but if you leave it like what we see today, for me, most of the problems that we're having in our marriages today comes from this, exactly this positioning of me, myself, and I, and our property, and our two children, and our this and that. You see, it comes a time where the abundance becomes a burden in the relationship. The abundance of even just two of you, from the day you're married to the day you die, to want to keep up a structure that it will only be two of you, is unrealistic. Now the children grow up. When we bring in the children, we even have enough time. The children are a blessing that they distract us in raising them, in taking care of their needs. But now look at the modern society. They look at it as a burden. But it is an abundance that is much. That's why it becomes a burden. In the African traditional setup, it was a senior sister. Hey, my mother was just, no, okay, I have a big sister. My big sister is in charge of the small sister. And so that's why you could see we started already babysitting. We could change diapers. We could take care of our juniors, already playing the role of mothers as children ourselves. Because you were just engulfed into it. You just got into a system that I am just a part of it. What I see my mother do, and that's why they had to raise for long, 5 years. You come up to 5 years before you're 10 years. A girl child could run a home with no stress, with no money. Until today, it's still happening. They run and manage everything. They just take care. They just become part of it. They just know it's their responsibility to become part of the family, to take care of my juniors, to make sure that if mom is not home, before she comes home, the home is organized. They have cooked without giving instructions. So how do we come with a kind of a strange community and a model where, no, it's a children's right not to do this, not to do this? Of course, nobody respected the right of their children like the African state. And I still go to argue, and I call people to challenge to say, even the act of beating that that the Europeans are saying, oh, because we beat our children, we learn it from them during the times of slavery. They're the ones that brought that. I never heard in the village, even my child, growing up with, you can imagine, without these restrictions and all these laws and the way they have put it today, you can imagine how headstrong we were. Can you imagine? Okay, for instance, 10 children in the compound, 15 or so. What kind of a father has such strength to be beating those children, or a mother that will shout at those children to not do what? No, it was the harmony in the whole thing. It was the harmony at a certain point where I just believe, okay, the girl is already matured now. She has a right to go. I will not tell it like here, it's a right to bring your date or do this. I will just understand, because I just know these things will happen. And I start cautioning, like my mother did to us, like the girl, look at you say, carry up your hands. So you carry up your hand. Is there, do you see something under your armpit? Look at mine. Are they looking alike? Look at your chest. Do you look at, look at your form. Are we looking alike? That was a communication way to say you are already, metamorphosing into an adult and a woman. The trainings was just like that. Oh no, so you're not allowed now to bathe naked with your brother, or you people to share a room. It was just as harmonious as that. They didn't need to go to school. My mother never went to school, or my father or my grandmother, never. But these things that we struggle with today, they just did it in a very simple, easy way, and everything. Okay, does it mean they didn't have their challenge or had to go through? Because sometimes even they say things, we'll do it, we'll skip out during the window in the night, go to disco and come back, and you still have to, go to the farm and pretend like you never were out. These things did all happen. And that was what made the family so sweet. But today, if I just have a right to just go me out and just come without any struggle, and we sit and just normalize everything and become into it. So our art of communication was different. Body language most of the time, role modeling of the elders of the community in that. But then there would still be something wrong. It didn't mean that, okay, we just adhere to it. We would still break some of those rules, but the discipline was different in our own context, and everything worked out. And I'm a product of it. I'm a proof of it, from a village that even till today doesn't have light or any road or anything. And I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you. So it worked.
Indeed, indeed. For those of you who are just joining us, we are here with Dr. Susan Tatah, and we are talking about polygamy from a village perspective. And I'm going to need each and every one of you to that is right. Hit the like button and make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you have not, and make sure that you hit the bell so that when we upload or do live shows, first one to get the notice that we have added some new content. And so we are wrapping up here. So before I ask the last question, I want to make sure that everyone knows where they can find you. And so you can go to the link below, and I'll have this in the description, susantata.panafricandailytv.org. And you can find her also on YouTube at Pan African Daily TV. And I'm not sure if this is for any other social media as well, but if there's any other social media, you can let us know. And if you want to know more about the African Festival, the International African Festival, here is the link as well. But if you go to susantata.panafricandailytv.org, you can reach all of her social media and all of the other endeavors that she is involved in. And so here is my last question, and that is, how do we make, or how do we adjust this traditional African institution of polygamy in a construct where we no longer live in the village? You know, for those of us who are in the diaspora, who never grew up or had the privilege to grow up in that kind of setting, and we find ourselves in modern cities where, you know, like I'm here in Philadelphia. However, you know, my parents and my immediate family is back home in Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they left from their parents, you know, who were living in Louisiana and New Orleans and Opelousas. So, you know, with each generation kind of spreading out away from the center, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how do we keep this, the spirit of this institution, the construct, which in many cases requires that village backing, that family backing, you know, in the kind of society that exists today?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, it is hard. Looking at a lot has been taken away from us. And the first point goes to the recognition of who stole my cheese, who took what out of me, and why. So when we answer that basic question, it takes us now to how. So the first question would be why, and the second question would be what, which leads us now to the solution. But one thing I wanted to say, whether it is in the village in Mecca, where I come from, Cameroon, or it is in Texas or Philadelphia, or it happens in the Congo, or where we are one people, we are spiritual people. The only thing is to understand what happened to us and why did it happen to us, and who had an intention to make me become somebody that I am not. What was your intention to raise and educate me into somebody that I am not? And so when we start, like we did the gospel according to Yeshua yesterday, and we said, let us just start and say, I know nothing now, and I want to know something today, just today. And so we evoke the spirit of light into our darkness. And when the spirit of light lightens our darkness, which becomes now our understanding of the day, so we begin a new day. And that new day starts by us redefining, look into the mirror, and who do you see? Do you like who you see? If you don't, why? That's why you begin to answer the question of why. So there is nothing absolutely a problem or a challenge because I grew up in the village and then we're growing up here. No, it's about the notion of a family and the structure that we put within. Remember, even in the village setup, as we're talking about polygamy, our men were never at home. They never were obliged to be at home. You know, we were people that moved from one place to the other. So if we just talk about simple facts like the man was to protect the family and to bring symbolically meat. That's just a word that we say he had to protect the family. But now what does it take to protect the family? That is the question that comes out of it. And then the second part would be provide meat. How? So when we take both, we see that to protect the family had to do with a lot of things. Most of them wandered in search of greener pastures to protect their families. And they only came back seasonally. Okay? And that's why the women were focused on building their home, the community. The men will be the one that will wander and even come back during another season only to come maybe and produce another child. And so it never was a construct like it was a static situation. Because when we talk about the village, sometimes we just look at a village setup and a compound. No, a village and a compound setup is a spirit. It's a collective spirit. But in the physical form, it wanders. It evaluates, it travels. And that's what I'm trying to say. Whether it is in Texas or Philadelphia or what, it is the same. But it's just that something happened. And now the something that happened is the something that took our energy, took our abundance, and took that need of I, one more. And then now it breaks that structure. So, but you just realize that when we live in that concept of the abundance of who we were and the harmony was there, I understand my king. I trust him. I just love him that even if he goes away, and most of them used to wander away for years. Some died even without coming back home to see their families and their children. But they trusted the compound, the village to the women. They entrusted everything and they came back and everything was in order. All they needed to do was just to worry about, what am I bringing back home? If I went for a chase or to acquire land, if the land was not fertile, remember we were moving from one place to other. I mean, in that real ancient tradition. So the men would just come, they settle there where is fertile for their women. The woman is raising and building the community and they go. They go looking for other pastures. If they had cattle, then they will relocate. Like you see, the migration. Where does migration, the word migration comes from? It comes even from our totems. So when they migrated with their cattle and they went and they had to be there for the whole season, what happened at home? If the woman would only be there and say, no, I need my husband because he has to sleep with me every day, because he has to go home every day, I have to see him, that structure would not function. That structure functioned because the mother, the queen, and the king, they came to the understanding, and the village just understood him. There was nobody in the village saying, oh, this man has left his woman and he's gone. Nobody even knows where he's coming up. The neighbors just know the man is a hunter, has gone out to look for something to protect the family and the village. And so if I can come in and support, or we take care of this, it was a principle of sharing. I mean, sharing to a point where, that's why I said to be in this concept and for us to build it again, our structure of polygamy, and you have to be so selfless to a point that, but being selfless is not a weakness. It is the love that you have for yourself. Until you have that self-love to the level that is required, don't go into it until you are prepared to be at that level. And to be honest with you, when you get to that point, there is nothing that is, it's challengeable in the structure. You can only get the benefits. The man is happy, the children are happy, the mother is happy, they do their own things. The men hang up, they go to the bar, they drink, they talk their stories, they drink their cola nut. We, the women, we go to our clubs, we talk with our girls, with our children, we organize the community, and we come back home to settle. And everything is just there. And each time your husband will come home, it looks young, he looks fresh, he looks like just coming. But what is it that I see you every day, day and out? And because of that, the rupture, the quarrel, the everything. It's all about diversity. But you need to have when I say there's nothing difficult. It's the most simple format of family structure. Because now when we make it as if, oh no, people have to go, the only thing you need advice, if you really love it, and I encourage everybody to say, this is us, we have to build on it. And we see it's not even going to be different. It's already exploding into it, but in a wrong way. Because these ones that do it in this kind of a format without getting advice, even to get advice on the woman, and the woman knows, actually, I'm going into marriage, but I know that this is the lifespan of this marriage, and there are a lot of opportunities and possibilities to design my family to be one of the biggest kingdom if I really take charge like a queen, to direct it and to put harmony and reciprocity and trust and justice and everything into it. What will make it different? What? Nothing. It's just because we were fooled into this thing. Now we go to the altar and just grease some kind of vows, things that you know you cannot even keep. And now when you go into the practical format of it, you can't keep it, then it becomes a problem. And then you see, because you want to fight to keep the community, the norms of the community, and people to see you like a responsible woman or a responsible man, and you cannot go against this because it's a religious setup that has to be like that. You die in that bubble and that pain until it comes to a point where it is toxic and you break each other. That's just it. But imagine it will just be the other way around. And you can see it stays fresh, it's renewable every day. Every day your woman is your woman, because that harmony, that agreement doesn't mean we will not quarrel or will not, no, but we know intentionally what we plan for our kingdom. And that's how we ruled and reigned, and the queens and their kings and their sons and the kingdoms could pass over wealth, generation to generation. Mother-in-law, sisters-in-law, brothers-in-law would sit and they all agree, and things just function. And that's why they could build the pyramid. And that's why they could construct everything with no technology, because they had enough time for themselves. The women had enough time for their beauty. They didn't have to get time to do anything. They had enough time to sit and commune and take care of themselves and just harmonize. The men also. And so they had the energy that was in reserve, and this energy, they could build their walls. Mansa Musa could be the richest man ever because he had so many cattle, so many wives, so many children. He's one of the men that I think the Bible is talking about as King Solomon. If I look at those characters, King Solomon in the Bible for me is a Mansa Musa, the richest person that ever be, the biggest nation, and the cattle and fields and golds and diamonds and everything was him. If he would put it in the modern day. But how would he have harnessed that wealth? If me, I need from you, my king, that you have to be with me every day, you have to do certain things because of the norms, where will you have the energy to protect me, protect the family, bring in the wealth? Why am I just focused on you and not focusing on me to see what I do in terms of building the community, the compound, doing internal policies and laws that govern us? So it is done. It is possible. And I encourage anyone that says, hey, Dr. Susan, I love this concept. I need you to teach me. I give consultations on that. And you would enjoy a happy Black family love for yourself, for your community, for your family, for your kingdoms. And to be honest with you, it's just, I don't know how I can say, it's just priceless. Even for those that are also single, I do those consultation about how you want to build it in that kind of, if you want that kind of a format, there's just a lot of opportunities in our relationships, just too much to do with ourselves. And the more we focus on that, every other thing, our wealth, our harmony, our love grows from day to day. It remains young. It never grows old. You never get tired of your man doesn't get tired of you. But these are awakenings that we're beginning to develop in this model. I also was not like that. Do I sound like somebody that really was like this? It's just that my ancestors have also arrested me into the position where I have now, and I have a lot of wisdom. Just 2 years now, my whole ideology and all these things has changed, and I just want to use that to empower our families, our loved ones, our kings, our queens, to just be the best of who we were meant to be. Thank you.
I appreciate you, and again, I appreciate the time that you have shared with us and the wisdom that you have shared. And I know the viewers are going to enjoy this very much. And again, if you want to know more about our guest, Dr. Susan Tatah, as well as if you're interested in this type of lifestyle or just want to know more, um, you can reach her at susantata.panafricandailytv.org, and she'll be more than happy to engage and inform you further, on this topic and more. And so there's a lot that she is involved with and knows about, and so we just don't want to limit her to this one particular topic. But I do appreciate this greatly, and I'll give you the last word.
Mbongi, I just, it's a harmony. Your platform actually sparks up. To be honest with you, when you invited me on this conversation, um, I knew that I will be sharing some experiences, but not to the extent in which I did tonight. So I think your platform has that vibration to connect people, to bring the harmony and the values which you yourself stand for is actually what is creating the magic on Bongi. And to all those who actually tune in to watch and to listen and to learn or to just hear this conversation, please, the only thing I can tell you is to subscribe on Bongi. Just be a part. Because this platform that you see me on, you would always see me here. Each time my brother interrupted, or I call him my husband. Any platform that I go there in this kind of a format, believe me, don't be surprised that I'll be announcing that we're getting married. I'll be the 10th one. And so, yes,
Indeed.
what am I talking about? It is really making an impact, contributing, supporting in every little way. The knowledge that we are giving, that the time that Mbongi is spending to bring this kind of ancestral knowledge and information to us is priceless. So go ahead and support this platform, share it, click and subscribe your notification buttons. And to be honest with you, you would still find me on this platform. So I want to thank all of you for your time. If I said something that was disrespectful or I said something that was just out of your norm, consider it French. Anything that I said that is just not, I always say is French. So for me, French is mm-mm, okay. So that's it. Thank you so much. I love all of you. And it will be a pleasure to have you here again. And thank you so much for having me.
Indeed, again, the pleasure is all mine. So, with that said, until next time in Bongi, uh, Hotep, Habaragani, peace and blessings, and y'all have a blessed week. Peace.